Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss the Suspiria remake from 2018. Directed by Luca Guadagnino and starring Dakota Johnson. Tilda Swinton 3 different times. I'll talk about it. Mia Goth and Chloe Grace Moretz. And what did I remember going to theaters for this thing and remember thinking, this movie is weird and boring. Well, will it be the same thing this time? Now, I haven't seen that original movie, but I have seen the sequels, and I remember being bored in those damn things too. Let's see how this will go. Let's get into it. It's 1977 in West Berlin, and a teenage girl named Patricia, played by Chloe Grace Moretz, visits her psychologist, who happens to be an old man named Josef Klemperer, played by Tilda Swinton in role number 1 out of 3. And Patricia talks about a song that is stuck in her head and explains how some of her instructions at her dance academy are witches. Yes, I said it, witches. And Dr. Klemperer is skeptical about it as Patricia leaves her things behind the doctor's office. And despite I like Chloe Grace Moretz a lot, this opener is well shot, but unfortunately it just doesn't engage me, as director Luca Guadagnino makes this movie absolutely strange the entire time. But Moretz's character is someone we'll never see again for the rest of the movie, which is a shame. But to be brutally honest, I don't know if this scene goes anywhere at this point. After the opening credits, we get an American dancer named Susie Banyan, played by Dakota Johnson, arriving into Berlin by train. And after 2 movies I reviewed Dakota Johnson in movies like A Bigger Splash and Madam Web, I've said my feelings about her in those 2 shows. I'm done at this point. I'm not going to explain it all again about why I don't like her as an actress, as she comes off very bland in this movie, as I don't like the 2 characters I get introduced to this far, as well as Tilda's. Well, maybe I like Yosa, but I couldn't really tell you. She walks to the dance academy and says she's been invited by Madame Blanc, played role number 2 by Tilda Swinton, and their second role out of 3. Don't get me wrong, Tilda Swinton is talented in playing 3 different characters, as one of them is an old man, but Susie auditions for Madame Blanc, and she steps in and she's impressed with Susie. She hires her to be a part of her dance academy, and these characters are coming off a little pretentious, as I can't follow this plot of this movie. And it's all over the place. Like, I'll talk about it why later. Well, I'll talk about how it is later, I'll say. Later that night, the instructors meet, and as it turns out, they are in fact in a coven of witches, as the witches are holding a vote on whether to replace their leader, Elena Marcos, played role number 3 by Tilda Swinton in the 3rd role. And while she's not there yet, she won't show up until the end. The witches vote for Mother Marcos to maintain her leadership, even though her plans led to the loss of missing Patricia. And Susie meets another fellow dancer named Sarah, played by Mia Goth, whom I've never seen X or Pearl from A24, as she has another movie in that series coming out this summer called Maxine with the 3 X's. And I did see the trailer before Civil War, and I'm not interested in that then, and I'm not interested in it now, as she comes off rather creepy looking at. And after seeing her in the movie, as well as Everest and A Cure for Wellness, and here, I don't want to see her act in another movie, and I'm not a fan of her. We get to outside Berlin is shot, while it's shot very good, and Luca Guadagnino does have talent for making locations look beautiful. I'll give him credit for that, but so far this movie is way too fucking weird. We get to the first rehearsal, and Madame Blanc tells Olga to replace Patricia in her role, and Sarah will take over Olga's role. And Olga comes off nasty to Madame Blanc and walks out of the room because she knows they're witches, and Madame Blanc asks who could take over the role for Olga, and Susie volunteers to dance that role, as she's seen it in a documentary 10 times or maybe 100 times in the library. While I'm not buying it, as she performs the dance, while it kills Olga, it is painful to watch her die like that, but as far as I'm concerned, I didn't really care at this point, as I don't remember ever knowing her too well, as I remember this movie being as weird as it was today, well, back in 2018 to today, and I haven't seen it since theaters, and at this point, I know it's completely fucking weird. The witches ask for Susie's urine, which is disgusting, while the instructor sees Olga's dead body like some kind of demon. While I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck is the point of this movie? As I looked at the original's runtime, and it's an hour shorter than this movie, as I felt its length. It, and that length without, and if that length without a goddamn point, as it was frustrating, and the acting in this is adequate, but mostly because of Tilda Swinton, as she's the one that comes off mostly adequate. But she's talented, sure, as she's the best three characters in the movie, but everyone else comes off bad, while their performances come off as, while her performances, Tilda Swinton's I mean, as the best thing about the movie, in my opinion. A couple of men who happen to be police officers come to the building asking about Patricia's disappearance, while Susie and Sarah look for Patricia's file, as well as her number, and don't find anything as they go to the dance class, and Madame Blanc sees Miss Tanner and have a talk about a missing Patricia. Excuse me. And there were times the movie was haunting, sure, but I don't care. The movie starts to slow way the fuck down, and I'm over an hour into the movie as Yosef, the psychologist from the beginning of the movie, visiting the police department. For what reason? To find Patricia, and I'm bored with this movie while the witches are rehearsing, as Susie has a bit of trouble with her movement, as a woman named Caroline shows her how to do her movement, and she's still witnessing physical weakness. Excuse me. And she feels tired, and am I following what's going on in the movie? I'm afraid I'm not. While Caroline is suffocating, gets hospitalized, and Yosef visits the dance academy and tries to chat with a friend of Patrician's, who happens to be Sarah, and they have a bite to eat, and with her, together. But anyways, I'm very bored at this point, as this is a boring film and it slows way down. Susie trains French with Madame Blanc, while we follow Sarah in the room where Olga died earlier in the movie. And do these scenes work for me? Well, yes and no. The yes part is it did kind of scare me, like I thought she was going to die, and no, because it didn't engage me that much, as it's mediocre at best. Sarah visits Yosef in his office, and he hands her a weapon of some kind, and is stalked by one of the instructors, and we get back to the dance academy, and Sarah goes to Susie as she knows something is wrong, and Susie is denying it. And I've seen this scene acted so many times it became a cliche with this movie. They get prepared for a dance, and as the show starts, Sarah hears Patricia's voice, and she tries to look for her, but she gets killed while the show is in progress, and she dies the same way Olga did at one point earlier in the film, anyways. At the same time, she couldn't see shit. I couldn't see shit during that scene, but we move on to a dance sort of interesting, I guess, while Sarah's eyes were glowing like she was Riddick, and she dies again on stage, and probably good riddance, because I'm not a fan of the actress. With Yosef watching, and why was he there? I couldn't tell you, because I don't know. Maybe to look for a way to get the witches dead or some shit like that. They rehearse again while Yosef gets home, and the movie is all over the place as it's a mess. Yosef gets captured by a couple of witches while Susie gets back to the dance academy and walks in on a witch ritual with a bunch of naked women, and this scene did freak me out, but at the same time, I thought, what the fuck is going on, as this scene is very fucking strange. While Madame Blanc wants to clear Susie's mind, but Susie has other plans as she accepts the ritual, as she's one of the three mothers, while some women die, but mostly the instructors, including Madame Blanc, in this most violent way possible, as Susie rips off her chest, as some of the girls dies, because that's what they ask from Susie, and Yosef gets out of there alive, thank God. And a woman wakes up, and Yosef arrives to the office while Miss Tanner teaches the class at the dance academy. I guess she's the only one that doesn't die. And Yosef isn't doing well, as Susie visits him and tells him the truth about the witches and his wife, who we kind of met. I forget what her name was, Danka or something? I didn't write it in my notes, but she tells him how she died, and her final thoughts, which happened to be her birthday, and where he took her to a concert, and was only thinking of him as Yosef cries and says she's the woman that died already, which was pretty damn confusing, as Yosef has Alzheimer's, after what happened with Susie, as the credits rolled to the after credits scene where Susie stares at the audience as a witch with some blood and walks away, and this climax was way too fucking weird as this whole goddamn movie. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 4.3 out of 10. Don't get me wrong, director Luca Guadagnino does do a fantastic job at the cinematography and shots of the movie, but this movie is way too fucking weird, and I don't like any of the characters, despite Tilda Swinton is talented for playing 3 different characters, but it's unfortunately not enough for me to care for any of them, as Dakota Johnson comes off bland, and I don't want to see Mia Goth in another movie ever again, as I'm not a fan of hers. The movie is an hour longer than the original, and I felt its length. It's too long. While I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck is the point of this movie, as I don't understand this plot whatsoever, as the acting is adequate, but mostly because of Tilda Swinton and her performances, but still, I don't give a fuck, are the best thing about the movie in my opinion, but it still doesn't make me care. There were times the movie was haunting, but at the end of the day, I don't want to watch this again, as it was a chore to sit through the 2.5 hour length this movie is, and I was bored. And unfortunately, this doesn't make me want to recommend it to someone, as this is a mild non-recommendation, as I do not care for this movie at the end of the day, and to end the conversation that way. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Bones and All. I haven't seen this one, but until we get to Bones and All... Sorry, that's my witch impression.